Welcome back to the Dial In podcast. I'm here with a special guest, John Boros, who is the founder and principal of Keylight Development. John has over 15 years of experience in a previous career for top global marketing agencies, running his own agency as well. So we've got a really interesting perspective on both real estate development and marketing here today, coming all the way from Detroit, Michigan. Thanks, John.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And I'm excited about the ceremonial sip and clink.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me over the border. That's rich. I needed that.
Yeah.
I really did. That's good. And you said you've got a partner who is both from Colombia and where was the other location?
Brazil.
Brazil.
Yeah. So we have a software engineer. He's our lead software engineer. His brother-in-law was living in Brazil and a master roaster and decided to basically be our provider of espresso. We wanted to do it the right way. So we had him come down here to Windsor. We tried 10 different beans and came up with these two. So the one on your side is our performance brew. So we like to call it.
Nice.
Has definitely it packs a punch. It's definitely a wow factor. That's the one that we're drinking today, I believe. So it's got more of a nuttier, kind of chocolatey flavor to it. And then our white bag here is our everyday drinker. That's, just a mellow coffee. Maybe it's 4 p.m., maybe it's after dinner. You just want to,
anytime coffee.
Anytime. Espresso.
Okay, and so it's more caffeinated if it's medium roast or light roast. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's common misconception is if it tastes stronger, it's more caffeine. But it's actually those mellow coffees that pack a lot more caffeine in them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something I learned too, because I used to always get like the heavy, dark roast. They're glossy. They're really like deep flavors. I had no idea that was like actually so much was roasted out of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The actual punch you're looking for.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've only learned that like maybe a handful of years ago.
Yeah.
So it's changed my life.
Yeah.
I buy coffee very differently now.
Yeah.
But this is good, man.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Okay, so Keylight Development. Just, walk us through a little bit of, what Keylight Development is, your approach to development with Keylight and how it came to be.
Sure. So Keylight Development is strictly based in Detroit right now, and it's me.
Yeah.
I've lived in the city more or less since 2013, and so I saw it from like bankruptcy till today, where we could say, it's maybe not night and day, but it's almost that much.
Yeah.
They didn't have money at the time. This was like bankruptcy in 2013, so like no street lights were on outside of the city center. It was kind of Wild West, and it was fun as like a urban explorer where you get to go in all these old buildings, and like I did a lot of that. That was fun, but it's also signs of a decaying, industry and economy. And so, I think while at the time I was just getting to Detroit, I had completely different hopes and dreams. I went to the city for my foray into business ownership in the commercial video production space, right? So this was something like I left Grand Rapids to go make a name for myself out in the city. I had an agency that was giving me some work. It's a PR agency that was like exclusively doing GM business. So I actually cut my teeth on really fun stories, like chasing cars on the test tracks and stuff at Milford. Getting to interview the CEO and these like leadership positions down to the guy on the line who's putting in, spark plugs or whatever. It's like, it was cool. Like a broad array of storytelling types. So I loved it. And I built a business basically from myself, all over again. Yeah. So kind of like starting from where I did there, it was me again with hopes and dreams of building a production business. And I was the director, the cinematographer, the editor, the animator, every role I played, the producer. And so, what I learned from that is the work started getting better the more I built the team out, right? Finding those specialists that are actually like amazing and just instead of being a generalist like myself, it's like, okay, I got the DP, we got multiple animators, we just started building it out, and it was a lot of fun in a city that was growing and like changing at the same time. So I had an awesome time. Like early days in Detroit were great. Anyway, long story short, I think there's a lot of similarities to what I was doing, which is comforting. And I think Detroit is prime for like a whole new way of thinking about infill development that it hasn't really tried before.
Yeah.
So, on that note, I would say like Keylight is here to revitalize and reconnect the neighborhoods of Detroit.
You made a very interesting parallel from marketing being very similar to the creative process of building a home. And it's funny enough because a few developers that we've worked with have coined us as the marketing agency for real estate development. Because in reality, like when we're putting together these visuals, we're putting together these websites, these packages for sales purposes, for buy-in purposes, for investor purposes, for municipality approvals, we're really marketing their projects, right? Although it is technology, it's a form of marketing. And we found success in marketing real estate development and bringing it to life. Because a lot of developers may have a concept, they may have a piece of land, they may have a drawing that's just, it's your 2D sketch, whatever it might be, but actually being able to market it, show someone the story, tell someone the story of what this development's gonna be like, what it's gonna feel like, what it's gonna look like, that goes a long way with getting these projects off the ground.
Mm-hmm. And I think to your point, like that storytelling is the missing piece for a lot of these people. And I didn't realize going into this business that like it was so front and center in not only like the process to basically sell a community or to sell a city on an idea, even down to selling a person on an individual house. It's still a story. It's like, oh, this land used to be owned by old McGregor, the farmer, and this barn, we're going to keep on the property. All these little pieces of the story that, like, to me and you, like we get that these are props in a way, right? They're part of the narrative that people like to latch onto to make them feel, and it isn't manipulation necessarily, but it is funny to see just how much narration is the vital piece, maybe one of the most important pieces of selling something.
And what not everyone knows, but you may know as developers, when you go to do a development application, part of getting that development application through is like, are you including some kind of heritage? Are you keeping up a piece of the land? Are you keeping that barn in the land? Are you keeping the name, right? Oftentimes developments are named after historical figures or streets or areas to preserve that story. Oftentimes, 90% of the time, it's tied back to a story of that piece of land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on top of that too, I think one thing I've really enjoyed about talking with you and the product and similar products is it's also like the visual language for the actual homes themselves, these spaces that people are going to live in and spend most of their time in, to be able to actually like see themselves in it. And one thing we're trying to accomplish with Keylight is making home building, making buying and like configuring a home just like configuring an automobile. If you go to GM's website and you build a truck, you could just confidently purchase that truck. You could press, go and then go to a dealership somewhere in your area and go pick up the car. Like that week, and you're not going to second guess it. You've already picked out the wheels and the color and the trim level and all that. Like, we need houses to be more similar to that process. Especially like one interesting fact here in Detroit is that there are and this is minimum, right? Just owned by the land bank alone is like over 63,000 vacant lots. Mm-hmm. So when you think about the scale required to fill those, you've got like such a big task. You not only have to find, the right cost structure to get something on the ground that like most people can afford. You've got to think about speed of how to get those under the ground quickly because you have so much work to do. But it's also like that buyer story. You need people to be able to quickly personalize something for themselves that doesn't take the same timeline as a custom build. So you're trying to pull all this together in a system. And I think like one thing I like about your system is that it does give you all of those opportunities, right? Yeah. I can essentially get a home design modeled. I think that's a crucial piece that's missing right now is the software. Yeah. Because we could talk all day long about like, let's build more houses. We need more builders. We need better systems and we need better operations.
I totally agree with that. And I feel like when people are buyer behavior, when you go to buy something, whether it is a vehicle or it's a watch or it's a piece of clothing or you can see it, right? And you're investing money in something and you know what the end product's going to look like. And construction is one of those things. You may put down a large deposit, anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, and then have to wait for a year. That's a tough time to just kind of like, all right, I'm going to largest purchase in my life. I'm going to wait a year to see what it's going to look like. You're sort of taking a bet on that, right? And on that builder. So having something tangible and even getting site progress photos, right? Just feeling like you're a part of the process. Like that goes a long way. We've noticed that with buyers. It's just like keeping them apprised of the details that's happening on site and then showing them the end photo. So they have the end goal in mind and it feels less stressful.
Yeah, and I think like we're also getting into a point where people expect certain things differently, right?
Yeah.
They are getting used to like the Carvana model of buying cars and having them directly delivered to their house, just like 2-day delivery with Amazon. Like there is a different expectation of what an experience should be for buying a house, and the way that it works today is ridiculous. I do think the future that we talk about that we want to get to with buying a home online and configuring it like a car is so roadblocked by all these other things that have nothing to do with the process, the system.
Yeah.
Like the system's there. It's just, even right now I'm going through the journey of building a house. I just went to Coleman A. Young. It's a building downtown. This is where the building departments are. So you go up to the 4th floor and it's a series of different suites that have, this is 407, this is 434, this is the BC department, and it's interesting, even those groups, and no offense to them, like I know they're doing their best, and it's like I think from what I hear from some of the veterans in Detroit, they've come a long way. It used to be a lot harder to work with them, and I thought everybody was super nice, but still, I would go to the counter and be like, hey, I'm here to do this thing. What do I do? And they're like, oh yeah, you need this form, take this down to 407 and they'll take care of you there. I go to 407, and they're like, oh no, this is a 434 thing. You got to go over here. And and I'm just like, wow, this is still, and I mean, I could show you a picture. I took a couple of just rows and rows and rows and rows of old filing cabinets. And I'm just like, and you told me actually an interesting story about, this place you previously worked where there was like, a place where they would store files in a fireproof room and things like that. So like there's definitely there's definitely all types of ways in which we can consolidate it, but like at every level there's silos. And that's my point, is that like it's not as if I'm trying to say let's not even try, because it's so much to do, but it is so much to just do in one city. So I'm fascinated by it. I really am enjoying the journey, but like just to be clear, like it's just getting started, and it's like an adventure navigating this stuff.
Yeah. Well, you made a great point earlier too about how we think we know there's a housing crisis and we need to solve it, right? And we think we need more builders, we need more lots, when in reality we need better systems, right? But it's not just one system. It's not just the builders or just the buyers or just the subcontractors, right? It's the zoning application, right? It's going to see the city, which you mentioned. You're going to all these different rooms to get your final application. Then you have to go and get your land entitlements. Then you have to, make sure your suppliers are on board. So what fascinates me about the construction process is how many different parties there are involved in one project, right? You can have 30 different companies involved in one building, right? Everything from your subs to your engineers, to your architects, to your suppliers. So how are you navigating that? I mean, obviously you're building a team, it sounds like, that's going to work around Keylight Developments, but how's that process been in assembling the team?
It's been fun because like that's where I come from, like again, back to the production days, like that was my world, is like an army of contractors that specialize in all sorts of things. I mean, you build a board of directors, right? You're people that you can trust, who've gone through this process 100 times, 1,000 times, and you make sure you know where those landmines are. And so like I've done all that due diligence up front, and now at this part we're just kind of on the staffing side. The team is almost there. For the most part, we've got our core people, and I feel good about who those are.
You probably got maybe a dozen companies that are on this team, and if not growing from that dozen companies, would you say?
No, actually what's really beautiful about the modular space is that you don't need a dozen companies.
Okay.
In the respect that the entire home, as you know, is built off-site. So like all of those trades, right? MEP, that's all done off-site.
Well, what I always find interesting with all the developers we work with is how are you currently sharing all the information for the project, right? Because as soon as you call up a new company, they're going, okay, what's the project? What are the drawings? What is it going to look like? What's the scope? How are you sharing that information to make sure everyone's on the same page?
It's very like meeting them where they are.
Yeah.
At this point, it's how do you want me to send this to you?
Yeah.
Via email? Okay. You couldn't open it via email.
Yeah.
Here it is via text, like same PDF. Let's see if that works.
Yeah.
So it's still, the ideal state is not there.
Yeah.
But once the team's there and starting, and we get one under our belt, I think that's going to change. There's going to be expectations there, like, hey, we can't just kind of shoot around phone calls, missing each other. Like, we actually have to schedule a call. So I'd be curious how you deal with that, because that seems like probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Well, that SCELTA portal, the portal invite that we sent you when we were first working on that development project in Detroit, is our central data place. So if a developer is launching a new project, they would open up a workspace. And that workspace, you can invite your subs, you can invite your architects, you can invite your interior designers. It's sort of a shared collaborative space where everyone shares the same folders and documents. There's only one set of drawings, one set of architecturals. People can comment on it, they can download them, and then if they have a problem, they can always submit a service ticket right to you. You get notified, you can answer them right inside the app. It's sort of like we tried to create it like a Facebook page, right? Because we had the same problem where like people are not going to want to use a new app, right? It's just frustrating, it's annoying, right? So we figured if we can make it very similar to social media, which they're probably scrolling when they're in between breaks on your job site anyway.
Yeah.
So the closer we can make it to what they already use, the better it's going to have traction. And that's really what allowed us to create more efficiencies on construction sites.
Interesting. Yeah, and I could see once you get that adoption, like it's a no-brainer.
So we started as a tech implementation company. So when we would sit down with a contractor, we would say, okay, like same thing as you said, what's going well for you right now and what's not going well? And then I used to draw out these trees, like you said, from RFQ all the way to delivery. How does your process go? And what I used to do was say, okay, you need Google Drive here. You need proper emails. Like a lot of the emails were still Hotmails. They didn't even have their company name as their email, right? They're doing $6-7 million a year in business, and their email is still like 123@hotmail.com. I'm like, this is, how is this possible? So it's like, let's set you up a professional email. Okay, how are you storing documents? You need Google Drive. How are you sending quotes? Oh, on a Word doc. Okay, well, maybe you should try QuickBooks, or maybe you should try SAP, right? You should try Simply Accounting, right? So just a simple accounting software. Okay, that's the next thing. How are you doing your quotes? Well, we just, Excel sheets. Like, well, there's great quoting software out there. Have you ever tried this quoting software? And I just basically went through each process and said, you can use this tech for this tech for this tech for this. But by the time I got to the bottom of the list, it was like 8 different subscriptions, 8 different technologies, to the point that these companies were like, can you just build me something that does all of this? And I was like, sure. And that's really how we got our start, was taking those workflows that we built with all the different apps, and we said, how can we put this into one field management? And it went well, but every company had a different process. So now we're sitting there with 40 different management platforms and trying to maintain 40 different software stacks, and it just got a little bit hectic at the office here. So
yeah, you can't solve for every individual case. So it's tough to find that middle ground. It's like, what is kind of the target customer, that's the largest addressable market, that's going to solve the most problems for the most people. Yeah. And then, like you said, when you start developing additional instances for all these people and trying to maintain and manage, you've got an update that's coming through, like now you're doing that X40 or whatever, like that sucks. That's impossible to maintain. Right. So I think, smart pivot is one of the things on the startup side, right? You just like keep trying till you find that product market fit. Do you do the implementation actually? Do you have to do any of that hand holding?
Always.
Okay, really?
Yeah, so we have 100% adoption rate we're really proud of, which basically means every company that's signed up with us,
that's cool.
Everyone used the software and got up and running to speed. And so with doing that, we spent a ton of time actually sitting with contractors. But I'll take this stance, and I think I'll live and die by this stance. I don't think there's one project management software that fits electricians, plumbers, carpenters, bricklayers. I feel like, at least from my experience, working with a number of them, they each have different nuances. So there are electrical companies that operate similar to other electrical companies, but an electrical company field management app is a lot different than the way a plumber operates or the way a bricklayer operates. I mean, we have a very specific electrician company who's been using our software for 2 years, but you look at their software and it is dialed into their process. But if I tried to get a plumber to use their software, they'd be like, this is a different language. It's a different process. We have a very specific masonry company who tracks the number of bricks that they install every day, right? Like a plumber is not necessarily going to want to track all the pipe they maybe installed that day. So I quickly realized that like if we're going to take this route and build out custom project management softwares, we're going to have to do a different iteration for every single type of contract.
Right.
So,
But at least you could do like, think about Smartsheet or something,
Yeah.
right? Or Airtable or whatever. These are like databases, essentially table systems that allow you to do whatever. You could make completely different business systems out of the same tools.
Yes.
So that's what it seems like, while they're doing it differently and, measuring different things for their own needs for like, if that unit of brick is like important to them for their, whatever they're reporting, you could still, that doesn't change what the electrician might use as like a unit of measurement or whatever. Like, again, the flexible systems where you can sort of craft it yourself. So I guess let me just ask real quick on that is it possible then, is the system built to be sort of general purpose enough in order to allow for any type of business to sort of customize it themselves without you having to make like a fully separate system like we talked about where you had like 40 instances of, is that the goal? Or are you saying like, no, we want people to use it this one way?
we actually put a cap on our customers for real time. So it's more of it's a software now that we have available, but to a select few clients. And the way that we built it was you can turn features on and off. So we now have this large data set of 80 different contractor features. So if you're someone that wants to be able to create invoices on our app, well, that's a feature we would just turn on.
Okay.
If you're someone that wants to submit daily logs based on certain metrics, like a bricklayer, for example, you can turn that feature on.
Okay.
So what we did was we started to build out this database of all these different features. And every time we meet a new company who is going to take on our real-time software, we just simply turn on or off those features. And luckily, we've met with enough different types of trades now that if I met with another electrician or another plumber, I can simply turn features on and off. We've gotten to that point, but we realized that, like Smartsheets, we wanted to build something that everyone was going to use and didn't necessarily have to change too much. And that's when the portal came alive, and that's when the map came alive, was sales and communication. So the portal, we realized everyone needs to communicate. Everyone needs a centralized documentation storage. Everyone needs to comment back and forth to each other. Everyone needs to update statuses. So if you look at our portal, it's like 4 features, right? So we realized that if we want to build something scalable, we need to find a common problem across all companies. And what we boiled it down to was communication on site. That seemed to be the most common problem amongst trades, amongst clients, amongst engineers, was basically what's happening on site. What information do I need to do my job? So we actually took a bit of a pivot. We still run our real-time division, and we have a number of companies, 40 plus companies who are on that software. But lately, it's really been how can we solve the communication problem, and how can we get these contractors more work? Hence the portal focus and the new map focus, which I think I showed you the other day. So
The RedMap?
the RedMap.
RedMap's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for that to come to Detroit.
Yeah.
But no, it's an interesting idea, the RedMap being like, there's 2 things, for me, takeaways are, well, a few, but the 2 that stand out the most is, first, I can see kind of what's going on where. That might be like, for instance, Detroit is pretty open with where they're building, where they're doing public developments, right, for greenways or park systems, or, they want to focus on the Dexter corridor or whatever. It's very clear what they're doing, which is nice, because as a developer, you can say, okay, cool. That means that this is going to be nice. There's going to be a commercial corridor here, so people are going to want to live there within these streets, because within a few years, they'll be able to walk and grab a coffee, which is not that common. You can do that anywhere here in Windsor, I'm sure, but like in Detroit, there's not a lot of active commercial corridors in the heart of these neighborhoods, which is another thing we're looking to, certainly change. But yeah, so for me to be able to see, okay, not only is the city doing it here and here, but like there seems to be this like interesting growth happening over here. Like what's going on with that? You can look in and see, okay, is that going to saturate that area where I don't actually want to compete because I won't be competitive? There's going to be way too many units available within a given time, or is that something where a hotel is going in, or like again that commercial stuff that's going to create all these amenities for these local the neighborhoods. So I think it's cool, man. For that reason alone, I'm pretty excited about it. I think you worked with the team here in Windsor.
Yeah.
What are they using it for specifically?
So their initial feedback was, we've really wanted something like this for a long time. but they may have their own internal systems that they use, like GIS mapping systems, but it's only for internal use. So rarely do they have a public-facing interface where all information is in one place. Some municipalities are better than others. Windsor does a great job of listing all the current development applications that are out there, but it's simply just a series of PDFs. You click on it, it gives you 12 PDFs. It'll give you the site plan, it'll give you the zoning, and you got to read through 40, 50, 100 pages of documentation to realize what's happening. So the uptick from the cities, their main concern with us was ensuring the data fidelity, making sure that the data was as accurate as possible. So what our whole team is dove into is we've only inputted 100 developments right now in Windsor, so 118, because we wanted to be sure that as soon as we launched, the data was accurate. So what we're working on internally is our own internal scrubber, because we manually inputted 118 developments before kickoff. But then we realized, like, if to scale, to get to 1 million developments, it's going to take a lot of man hours. So we had to build an internal system, which is a scrubber. So it's an AI scrubber. So basically, we can take any municipal website, any city website, input it into our database. Our database then scrubs it, looks for keywords. So we give it very clear instructions. You need to find the stage the development is at, the description of the development, the density of the development, the surrounding areas, the address. And the other day, just to give you an example, it took us 7 minutes to map 400 developments in Toronto with this new scrubbing tool. Now, that's cool. That's impressive. But now we're in the process of, like, how accurate is that data, right?
So then you got to QC it.
Yeah. So we're actually in the works right now looking for a full-time data analyst, someone that's just like our QC person to just constantly make sure that those developments are up to date and accurate information. Because the cities are like, we will support this. We want this, but
Yeah, it's got to be accurate or they'll pull the plug.
exactly.
No,
we get one shot.
Yeah, exactly. That's cool. No, that's really exciting. And I think well, do you have any sort of, on the spot here, do you have any sort of timeline for when you're going over the river?
Well, right now we're actually already started with speaking with certain people in Michigan about getting that information. The land bank is a great data source for that. Because we're so close in geography, we currently have a plan in the next 2 weeks where Windsor, Essex County, not sure if are you familiar with London, but we're working our way up to London, kind of taking over southwestern Ontario, and then we're going to stop right at the edge before we get to Toronto, and then work our way over to Michigan. So we want to take up this corridor, and then that way we can get U.S. feedback and also Canadian feedback, because your development process over in the U.S. is similar to ours, but the information is portrayed in a different way on these websites. So we're just in the midst of learning your process.
Yeah. Well, in that standardization, I wonder if that even goes like municipality to municipality, or if it's like we do things differently here in this city, and who knows? Because I mean, those keywords and things you're scrubbing, you got to work off of like a standard source, right? And so who knows? Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'll be curious to see how that develops, but I know, that sounds like a headache, but I do think it would be worth, the effort. There's a lot of people that would get value out of that.
Yeah.
That's fascinating, man. Yeah. So I'll be curious to see kind of how that works in the product suite, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, cool. I've identified an area that I want to target, and you've got communications as a, let's call it a module in your suite of tools.
Yeah.
Is there something kind of bridging, like, so you've got something identified, you've got the ability to render out, to tell that story, to provide that sort of virtual experience for people. How do you see people going from like the RedMap to your, sorry, I'm totally reversing this like podcast here, just like taking over the questions, but
it's all good.
My apologies. So when you go from the RedMap to like that first narrative, rendering process, it's like another tool in your tool belt. Like, walk me through kind of like a developer going through that pipeline.
Yeah. So when you're first taking a look at the RedMap, you see a bunch of dots. And then when you hover over a dot, you'll see that development's information. And if it's a SCELTA development, if it's someone that we work with, they have more visuals. They have more stories to tell. Okay. So you can tell which development is a SCELTA development and which one's not. Which one that's worked with us. Because when you click on a development, you see all the visuals. You could see a 360 virtual reality tour. You could see 3D models. You get a bit of a better story of what that development's portraying. Now, if a developer doesn't use us, that's cool too. If they use someone else for renderings, or if their architect put together some renderings, we still utilize those too. So really, our process is, if you're a developer who has just a set of drawings or doing a large project and you're like, you know what, I see all these other developments and how they have nice drawing, or they have, nice photos and visuals. Yeah. I want those too.
Interesting.
You just simply hit request SCELTA services, and then it just, you submit your drawings, we provide a 3D model for you in a couple of days, and then we re-upload it to your data point so that on your map now you have a visual for your development. And then the cool part that we added, which was sort of like, we didn't mean to add this, was inquiries. So if you're a subcontractor and you want to bid that project, you simply hit bid interest, and then it sends a notification to the developer, ABC Plumbing wants to bid your project, and it sends them an inquiry. If you're someone who lives nearby and you live next door and you say, you know, I think your building's too tall, I think it's going to cause too many shadows on my backyard, you can submit an inquiry. So it says like homeowner ABC, they are concerned about the height of your building, so you get that inquiry as well. So we're starting to input all this data from subcontractors, community members, developers.
That's cool. No, and I think it sort of democratizes that that visibility, which you said is like prior to is really either an internal system or something they've got to dig through like 15 documents to know even what they're looking at. Yeah. If they even will know what they're looking at after that. Yeah. That's cool, man. No, that's exciting. I think there's a lot of use case for that. And just to keep bolting on stuff, like I would love to see, you know, one tool that I've been, you know, I know we've talked in the past about it. It's like just connecting these pieces together, some of them, right? We can't do all of it because that's too much. Yeah. But if in the middle, you know, we've got land plugged into a system, we have, you know, products plugged into a system, so homes that can actually be built on in these lots. So let's just take Detroit. There's 63,000 lots, and we know that they're roughly 30 by 100 feet. Yeah. Okay, it's pretty common lot size. So let's not offer home sizes that exceed that, or that won't fit, you know, the setbacks and such. So you've got a product line that fits, and you've got a product line that's built off-site that is built quickly, half the time of regular construction. And you can customize those things online so that people who are in the buying space, you know, can make it look the way they want it for the most part. You know, because one thing I'll say, as a side note, when I bought my house in June of last year, I had kind of, I think, 2 or 3 options, right? You've got a bad flip that you could go get. You've got a good flip, which is going to be highly competitive and rare, or you've got new construction, which is really, really expensive. And I think, you know, it makes it very difficult when you're out trying to buy a home. That's why a lot of people go to the suburbs of Detroit, because they're like, where do I go? Yeah. Well, a fun fact is that like over 95% of the homes in Detroit were built before 1980. So that means you've got a big old drafty house is like pretty much what you're going to get. Yeah. That's it. I mean, unless you're going to spend $700K or, you know, $500K on a new house, there's some for less, don't get me wrong, but it's not a lot of options. So when you think about providing people with those types of resources, right, giving those options to people, a new home in a lot in an area they'd like to live, that's walkable to commercial corridors, that has investment connected to it, so we can get you pre-approved with lenders who even have programs that are going to help you maybe with a down payment or whatnot, right? We also have employers that have people coming to the city from other states that are moving to Detroit, and guess what? They're looking at the same things I am on Zillow and seeing that there's no options. Yeah. So they're going to the suburbs. So it's really making it difficult. And I think, you know, one thing, you know, those employers will be able to do is help develop that pipeline. Of course, we're going to market the system, right? This would be something you would have to kind of aggregate demand into, but you pull all those pieces together, and now all of a sudden you've got supply with the lots, you've got the construction that's associated with the production, and the fulfillment, right? The delivery of it. So now you have builders who work with the manufacturers that develop the homes that are coming to Detroit to actually fulfill those promises to people who've made an order online. You need to make the pathway to get there so much easier. And so with all this conversation around systems, I know you got to start somewhere and, you know, work your way up to it. But I feel like if we get the right people in the room for a system of this sort, like there's a lot that it could provide for people. And it's not that big of a lift. This isn't a huge system. All these, you mentioned the GIS systems and like all that lot matching and picking and the configuration, it all exists. There's tons of it out there. So anyway, that's my dream system. That's what I like would love to plug into so that I can help, meet that goal of revitalizing the neighborhoods. It's going to take a lot of people, and it's going to take a lot of other small developers like me and builders that come out of totally different industries, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe because AI took their job or reduced the need for their knowledge. One way or another, like there's no other way to get there, I think, until we have better systems and more people that are willing to like put in the work to do it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of all those different people, what we found was the most satisfying reaction we had to the map was the fact that mortgage lenders that express interest, insurance companies express interests, architects, realtors, community planners, right? We had subcontractors. We had all these different unique personas signing up for the platform. We thought, well, this is interesting. You know, the other day, a construction insurance company reached out and said, hey, I'd love to grab coffee. I want to use this immediately. I've really been wanting something like this because they want to be able to provide the insurance to these companies. Yeah. We, had credit unions reach out. We want to be able to provide. We want to provide the financing. Construction lawyers. It's just like there's so many people that want this information all in one place, and if we can crack the ability to bring everyone onto the system and collaborate seamlessly. So if I'm a homeowner and I need, insurance, and I need a realtor, and I need a builder, and I need subcontractors, and if everyone collaborates and plays nice on this platform, I feel like that issue we're having of solving the housing crisis, I think we'll get a step further if we.
But I do think like what you're building for, the bringing all these people together in the system, and like you said, with contractors who can sort of ping the developers and be like, hey, whatever, like, or developers just say, hey, we're looking for so and so, and they can like identify that. It's interesting. I could see it definitely like. It's a lot, right? It's a lot of. It's cool that it sort of creates again this marketplace for people to get what they need out of it, right? In various ways, because there's some people looking for work, some people looking for contractors, and like you said, people want to have, access to that information for their own purposes, like this insurance company or whatever. So it's cool, man. I'm excited to see where it goes. Yeah. And I'm just hoping too that like. Yeah, the dream system I mentioned is like I even just to get lots plugged into a system that can like people can pick and start building houses. Like that's my first goal is to just get that there because it's going to unlock so much. So anyway, I'm going on a tangent about my dreams here, but that's
good.
That's where I know what you're building is getting us closer to.
Yeah. Well, it started as an internal tool. It started as just a way that me and the team can track all the developments that we were doing and then all developments that we want to do, right? So we just started pinging, putting dots, dot here. That's our project. That's a project down the road that we want to work on. And then once other developers, came in by our office and said, hey, what's that cool map you guys are looking at? Oh, well, that's all of our developments and upcoming developments. Like, oh, I would love to use that because I want to know what's being built around me. And the subcontractors catch wind of it. Oh, I want to bid those projects. I'm always looking for new construction projects. So I feel like we launched it a few days ago, and every day the use case has changed. We've had someone else reach out to us about I want to use it for this. So we're very keeping an open mind.
Yeah.
We don't know fully the power of this yet. We know it's wanted, it's validated, but where it's going to end up, I can't tell you exactly yet.
Yeah, well, that's the fun of it, and I think just like your other experience, where you were doing kind of 40 iterations of this for people, like the same thing's happening right now. You're about to find out, like, and at least you've learned all that before, so you're not going to make the same mistake again. But you got to just see kind of where most people are gravitating towards, and I think there's so much value there. I'm excited to just see how basically how the knowledge of a development is going to create all that added value around it. So that's cool, man. I think that's exciting, and I'm happy to hear it's been successful so far. You said just a few days?
Yeah.
Is all you've had it out?
We launched it probably 3 days ago. Definitely people that we haven't spoken to even in a long time, or people that we never met before reaching out. And what was interesting was even Facebook groups that just started commenting. People we'd never met before, just community members who are just saying, oh, that development's never going to go through. And that's the interesting part. We're starting to get these sentiments from community members. We don't necessarily know them. We're just providing the information. And yeah,
That's going to be fascinating. Yeah, because I feel like that's an interesting piece of the puzzle, right? The community aspect. Because you want that feedback, right? You don't want to find out later that this is going to be an eyesore for people, or like you said, that shadow that has created something. Now all of a sudden you're halfway through construction and it gets enough momentum, and now all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, you gotta build at half the height or whatever the horror case may be. I'm sure. I do wonder what people think about that, because I feel like there's, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that community involvement? Because it seems like it's a good thing, right? We want people to be able to express all of their interests and provide all their feedback. But like sometimes when you open up the floodgates, it turns into this, keyboard warrior.
So you can do it in one of two ways. You can add a comment as a community member and let them know that, I want my comment to be public on the development, or you can send an inquiry directly to the developer. But you have to identify, is it a zoning issue? Is it a noise issue? Is it a shadow issue?
Oh, nice.
So we try to make the feedback as specific as possible. So if you're just, I don't like the development.
Okay, cool.
We try to gear away from that. If you're just going to say stuff like that, you have to make it public. We also identify that user has to have an address. They have to identify if they're a homeowner or they're a renter. So we try to take a bit more intake information from the person, so it's not free fall, just like Facebook.
Because I was worried, like everybody and their brother coming out and like mounting this, campaign against a developer, and like just being able to substantiate that. That's cool. And then standardizing sort of, the concerns. That's one thing I always dealt with too, is like, what does somebody not like, right? When you, or especially in the creative field, like you're seeing with a video edit that you give to a client. And the client doesn't know how to talk about it and say like, I don't like it. Why don't you like it? Well, I don't like the, this weird pause here, or, they don't have the vocabulary to talk about why they don't like something. So giving them sort of that like standard reasons, the drop downs and that stuff like that. That's cool. Okay.
Well, every time that somebody submits an application for development, there's this criteria that they have to meet. And they're saying, if you can assist these developers in gathering this documentation and gathering the public feedback and putting it into a standardized application, that would be nice.
Interesting.
It would be nice if there was a standardized application, because every developer submits a different application. Some are submitting paper packages, some are PDFs, some are different documentation, some have no visuals at all, some have architectural drawings, some have just sketch drawings. So actually, in us working through this map, we may come to a point where we have a standardized process about here's the most successful. If you follow this format, we can't say for certain, but we can say that development applications are more successful when they follow this process.
Yeah, and you might, exactly. And you might eventually have data to support that. 36% more successful.
Right.
That's great. I heard she's the founder of Infill. It was at one of these events I mentioned going to, and she's working with New York and San Francisco basically to help do something very similar. Like the product is specifically that, essentially for the entire like permitting phase of the project. She walks you through like a 27-page document. It's consolidated down into like a very simple format for people to ensure that, because a lot of the problem and the bottleneck is around just doing something incorrectly, filling out the wrong information, not filling out the right, leaving something blank, or so. Yeah, to be able to say like, this is what's required, and it's going to make your project move more, smoother or whatever. That's cool. That's cool that this could actually help with that. And so I wonder, as you evolve, like you might even start tying this in straight to the source, right into the municipality. Yeah. And then let me ask though. So you've got these up here. The developers, like, because it's all public, do you have to reach out for permissions or whatever for the developers to say, hey, we put your listing up here, or we put your information up on our site? Like, how does that work?
So right now we only display information that's public on municipal websites. So if the municipality or township or cities put it on their sites and showcase the development, then it goes onto the map automatically. So because that information is publicly available, we display that. And then what we have is a system in place. If a developer wants to hop on the map, they can claim the development if it's their development. So you go through this claiming process where we verify the developer.
That's cool. It's like Google Business.
Yeah, Google My Business, exactly. So basically, the developer can be like, hey, that's my project, and be like, okay, great. Well, we're going to put it under your portfolio so that you can track all of your projects, the sentiment, the engagement, the leads, the bids, and then that developer can then use this tool.
It's a great way. So this is cool. I mean, from a business model perspective for you, like you said, this was, I think you said it spawned from the desire to basically have visibility, to have your own sort of list of those developments taking place because these are potential clients, all of them.
Yeah.
And so now, it's a really interesting model for you to basically have that pipeline, like a self-fulfilling pipeline that then can later convert through a click into, a customer.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So it's like, so if I claim my business, is it free for me to manage? Are you getting the signal?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you getting, basically, if I claim my business, do I have access to the back end where I can see all that community feedback? Do I have to pay in order to get access to what is being submitted through the portal?
Yes. So there is a paywall. You can see inquiries. So if you're getting bids, for example, from a number of subcontractors, what we do is we have a bid board. And in order to see your bid board, so we'll tell you, you might have 15 bids outstanding, but if you want to see those bids, you want to see the inquiries, you have to have the Plus account, right? So you have to be able to, you can log in. It's a monthly fee. For developers, it's $250 a month. For subcontractors, it's $100 a month. Then you get unlimited access to all your bids that are being submitted, all the inquiries that are being submitted by community members, all your engagement, so the number of times that your development was clicked, viewed, liked, comment. Then you can use unlimited AI questions. You can see unlimited documentation. So you can go to any development you want and see their documents and ask questions about their developments. So you kind of, if you are on the Plus account, we just open the floodgates to you to kind of use the maximum capability of the application. And it becomes your own light CRM because we noticed that subcontractors and real estate developers rarely have a CRM in place. And we didn't want to make some full-fledged CRM. We're just like, what do they really care about? They really care about leads, inquiries, and bids. So if we can just create 3 simple lists for them and keep track of it based on their developments, then that's it, right? So it became this spin-off CRM for them too.
That's cool. No, that's great. That's really smart. And I think this is the next phase of SCELTA.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. This is great because it's a direct line to future customers.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's already getting a lot of momentum. So congrats. That's really cool.
Thank you. Well, the whole idea with this too is we reach out to a developer like yourself and say, hey, we noticed you're building an 8-story building on Belisher Street. Well, we actually have 15 people who are looking to bid your project. We've got 30 likes already on your project. We got 10 inquiries from the public. We've got 4 or 5 different leads. People who are interested in buying your unit. Do you want to see it?
Yeah.
Are you interested?
No, that's a no-brainer. That's awesome.
So John, Keylight, going back a little bit too, I appreciate you diving so deep into
this is cool. I'm like a big systems guy, I've explored so many of them. I'm just like, it's been a big part of my career and things that I've tried to build myself and departments I've had to build are built on these, right? So I really love looking into it deeply. So it's cool. Yeah, I was happy to review with you on that. But I mean, just as a quick overview, like I'm just getting started and I'm excited what is to come. There's so much opportunity. It's just a rare place that you can find this, like where you can be in a lot and look up and see like that you're right outside of downtown and you're buying this for $1,000 or whatever, right? It's crazy. You don't find that anywhere. So I'm excited not only for, all the opportunity for scale there. I just think like the city itself is a really cool place and it's got a lot of potential. And again, once we get more of these commercial corridors inside of the neighborhoods, what we're going to see is more people coming, right? We've got our second year of growth, which is like since 1955 or something. Like it was like 0.63%, which was a big deal because it was for the first time growing.
Well, one thing too is you have something very worthwhile talking about, very worthwhile buying into, right? It's something that's exciting. And you mentioned wanting to do meaningful work. Like if we tied this back to the beginning of the conversation, you're not making TikToks or videos for large brands that are going to be popular for a day and get millions of views and then just disappear into the Instagram sphere, right? You're actually building something meaningful. You're going to leave a mark behind with Keylight, right? You're going to create a home for somebody who's going to be proud to live there, right? So I think you're in that stage of your career where you're doing not that you weren't before, don't get me wrong, but like you're in a stage where you're doing really meaningful work. It sounds like you're really proud of being able to do it in Detroit. And I think people are going to rally behind you. We are, certainly.
Well, thanks. No, and I think you're absolutely right. It is something like I feel a lot more proud personally of the work I'm doing. And I think, the upside of this future path is like, it's funny how different it's crazy. You feel crazy sometimes because you're talking to family and friends and they're like, what did you do? You're like, hold on, have you ever built a house? And I'm like, no, I haven't, but I know how to adapt and I know how to learn new things. And I'm like very interested in learning new things right now and in making an impact in different ways. And it's scary at first, but when you start just doing the steps and getting there and you get the builder's license, you go through that 6 month of learning and you just start getting hands-on experience, you start seeing this isn't as long as you're curious and you continue to ask questions and you continue to learn, you can pull it off. And so I'm saying this for myself, I'm saying this for the others out there who are looking to switch their lives up in their career, you can do this and Detroit needs it. So yeah, it's a fascinating space to be in, and I think once some of these things are fixed or just massaged a little bit to be a little easier for people to get in and to be able to start building a business without all that risk and all that upfront fear. And I want to, and personally I will say I'm somebody who would love to help others get to this point too. I would love to at some point build that framework. I love how a thing is made, and I love the idea of even publishing the process for people. Be hey, if you want to get into being a developer in Detroit doing single family homes, it's not a pyramid scheme. This is literally just information I'd love to show you so you could jump in too, because there's enough for everybody here. It's not that's the reality. There's so much to do that there is no competition. So anyway, that's why I'm excited, man. And I know we're deep here in time, but I'm excited to keep building. I'm excited to keep working alongside you. Yeah. And I think there's a lot that we can keep doing. And I'm excited to see where your business goes. Because while I've got my kind of pie in the sky dream of what I'd like to see out there, I think what you've developed so far and what you'll continue doing is really going to meet that demand. Yeah. And we're just getting our feet wet in Detroit and making strong relationships with yourself and with the Michigan Home Builders Association and doing a first project together. It's a step in the right direction, and we're really excited being your neighbors here over in Windsor, and just really appreciate you coming down here to Windsor for this conversation. Of course. Yeah, it's not far. It's funny how quick it is to get here. I was like, do I need an hour to get there? No, it's fast. Yeah. And so anyway, I need to come out here more. How can people find you? If someone's looking to talk to you about Keylight, talk to you about development, how do you find it? LinkedIn's probably the best place for sure. Yeah. You can find me, John Boros, in LinkedIn. That's where, you'll be able to interact and engage most with me. Okay. As far as future channels, we're in the building process of that, as you know how that works. Yeah. So we'll start there. Again, that's John Boros, founder, principal of Keylight Development, and thank you. It's been a great podcast. Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.